here we adapting too fast.
Yeah, we absolutely. So the Muslims in the U.S., I would say exactly. Number one is that they definitely were considered as the elite, at least wanted to be within the system too fast. And once you're within the system and you're not prepared, that's the main thing. Once you're adapting yourself and you become part of the system and you're not prepared. And what I mean by prepared, in where you have institutions that equip you with the ilm and advocate for you on a political level to make sure that you have the freedom to speak and defend your culture / your ideas. So we're hopefully, inshallah, we'll get there. But that's one thing is why we as a Muslim community in the US had been sucked into the challenge, where our children are getting lost fast, losing their identity, even though we like to think that, hey, we're doing a good job in Islamic schools, but the Islamic schools are really not enough because they themselves are not equipped with the professionals to really teach the children or even the adolescents, the Islamic studies that will enable them to be safe within the system. The system is right now really lobby based. It's a particular lobbies that are dictating what makes something as ethical and what makes something as unethical and what makes something as right, and the list goes on. And then we end up really getting sucked into the system, and we're not capable of giving our children and even ourselves the confidence to speak up and stand against the system. And of course, the system itself is founded based on certain lobbies, whether we're talking about the APAC or the LGBT or different systems or different lobbies. And then we as a minority, many times we are not capable of going against the system because we ourselves are, let me say, from our fathers, we're really just looking to become successful within the system. Unlike the Muslims in the UK, their aspirations are really simpler than the aspirations that the Muslims in the US are really seeking. The Muslims in the UK, most, not all, but you could see that they're usually lower class in terms of at least those that had come in. So therefore, they have less aspirations because you want to basically unemploy them, fire them, so they'll just basically go. It's not like you can fire somebody that is anyways working in a job that is paying a low wage anyways, because they're, to them, well, I'll find another low wage job, so nothing. And that's one thing, is that the more you seek in dunya, the more you seek in taraf and luxury, the more you become enslaved within it, because you cannot compromise. You start becoming enslaved within the system. Without you recognizing, you become literally thinking and manipulating yourself that, oh, I basically became an elite, therefore I'm upper class, therefore I'm better, therefore I have more freedom. But the truth of the matter, you would actually become part of the system and you don't know how to live outside of it.
Palestine has helped.
Palestine, I think, the last situation in Palestine had definitely freed a lot of Americans to rethinking their system. And oh, absolutely. Rethinking the system and letting them recognize. I think the number one I think social media, even though they had really tried to silence the masses from hearing the voice, but I think Gen Z was um, although there are a number of different reasons why Gen Z especially. Number one is that Gen Z generally has this view that you're supposed to somehow go outside and against the system. Okay.
How old are they again?
So Gen Z right now,
95 or 96.
yeah. So those are those that were born 95 and 96.
Oh, plus, yeah.
Yeah. So we're the old people. Any Gen Zs here? No. Oh, Gen Z. Okay. Are you serious?
Yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
How old are you? Really?
Oh,
No way.
that's,
Okay. We gotta respect them,
wallahi, we have to.
Yeah, there you go. So that type of personality in where go against the system really made them question a lot.
She's Gen X, not
Gen-
She's another Gen 4.
Oh, 94, okay.
Yeah, she's Gen
So made
Z.
them
She's
question
beyond Gen Z.
question a lot of things. And that's why there were actually a number of media reports that talked about Gen Z and TikTok and how they had went against the general system in thinking in let's say going outside of the general box that the APAC had actually wanted to shape the generations into, and they managed to get out of it. And that is causing all this trend on social media. That's one side. But the other side is also, I would say, to applaud the many Palestinians, not because I'm Palestinian. I think they're doing an outstanding job. Many were a lot more educated than ever before to understand the importance of documentation, the importance of social media, the importance of letting one picture, one word, one scene, etc., in these short reels, and how important they were in changing the views and even public opinion. I think that was an outstanding thing. Not to mention that many that had learned abroad. I mean, thumbs up for Hussam Zalloum or Zumlat. Sorry, Zumlat. I think he did an outstanding job in presenting a great narrative, a great confident way. So he's the ambassador for he's really the ambassador for the PLO in UK, but I'm not sure that his views at all were really Fatah slash the Palestinian Authorities view. I would say he was trying to express, I guess, a Palestinian view than actually what the PLO stands for. So the PLO does not at all support and speak in the language that Hussam Zumrut was speaking in at all. At all. In fact, they were really trying to speak about post October 7th slash the whole Gaza war and what was facing, but he was focused on that there is oppression, that what Israel is doing is what is actually terror. As much as they tried to corner him with questions, can you condemn? Will you condemn? And he was always taking them into, well, no, don't corner me with these questions. Here's what you really need to understand, and here's the right perspective that you are not displaying, and you're purposely not displaying it for a certain pro-Israel tactic. So I think, we've actually had a number of different people that had done an outstanding job in I would say, using the media or even their education and even their language. I think we've got a number of different people that had been educated in the West, did an outstanding job in speaking about this issue with a great advanced language. And it's really strange, I would say, like never before, the Israelis had actually done a horrible job, even though, you know, it's really strange, but subhanallah, many had actually slipped their tongue
So many times.
so many times.
And they have true intentions.
And it just came out, and it just came out. And subhanallah, it was really a surprise to all the PR, but definitely the Israeli PR this time had really failed drastically. Really failed. They absolutely did not expect that. Their officials, their ambassadors, even the language, even their videos, etc. They thought that they were being smart, but I think they didn't recognize that the communities are outsmarting them, and they are discovering the blatant lies that are within their videos. Now, for sure, if Facebook hears what I just said, man, that's the end of my Facebook page.
And that's okay.
Well, my videos are there, but anyhow.
You know,
So the good news is that usually Facebook doesn't censor me because they're like, oh man, she talks too much. 2 hours is too much. So they don't censor me. That's why probably none of my
I think
videos
they
were
didn't
done.
figure you out.
There you go.
But
They
then,
didn't
look,
figure me
Aisha,
out.
the thing is, it's not just those ones. I think there's a lot of people who are also non-Muslims, like the Jews who are for Palestine and Haq. There's so many people who spoke outline who went so viral, and they were either Muslim, non-Muslim. There's a lot of people that I personally saw who are not so much practicing. They're Muslims, but they're not practicing.
Well,
but they had a very
you're
WhatsApp,
right.
they
You
had a
know,
big impact. It's 20
well, I'm
million
not
people
sure,
watching.
but Bassem Youssef, I guess he was more speaking, to the lower class, to be honest. I don't like the language that he used
I don't
at
like the language
all.
either.
I'm not sure why he gained a lot of publicity. The language was too low. Even in Arabic, the language was too low. You don't have to be Jon Stewart in your type of language. I'm sorry, that doesn't make you cool. That really makes you really nothing but low. I mean, you're a cardiologist. You know how to speak better. And in speaking better and making even your viewers. I mean, when you see what was his name? I forgot what his name was. Pearson. What was his name? What was his name?
Piers Morgan.
Exactly, Piers Morgan. When he was like, "Oh, you can't use this kind of language." I mean, come on, man. Just have a little bit of akhlaq.
It's true.
Just have a little bit of akhlaq. At least respect the viewers. If you don't want to act in akhlaq, at least respect the akhlaq for the masses. I mean, you want to act like Jon Stewart in your shows. Uh, you know,
Yeah,
you've got your viewers, I guess. But when you are speaking on these kind of subjects, I mean, that's too low. You don't have to use this kind of graphic language, this kind of really low language. It's absolutely, subhanAllah, I cannot stand this kind of language at all. I cannot stand it. I mean, and it really presents, even he thought he was presenting Palestine and stuff, but it really presents even the case that you are trying to defend. When you use this kind of low language, it really presents it as a low matter, as a low issue. It doesn't give it weight. It doesn't give it akhlaq. You have to speak in ethics. You have to speak in ethics. You have to speak in dignity, in honor. You don't speak in that low language, whatever. But alhamdulillah, I'm actually optimistic that yes, we definitely lost a lot of lives. Definitely, there's no doubt about that. But I think there was a lot that was accomplished. And what I mean by a lot that was accomplished, not necessarily,
it's knowledge.
I would say what I mean by accomplished, I think it was accomplished that we had the voice the injustice, and people coming back, even those that had nothing to do with Islam. Right now, we're really learning about Islam to see the resilience, to see the patience, to see, despite all the trauma, of how these people were capable of really going beyond trauma to stand strong, to stand confident, to stand powerful, and that was really a result and motivated by faith. That's a huge thing. I think that is going to bring in the I would say the Muslim momentum within the issue of Palestine. I think we had made Palestine a very nationalist issue for a long time, and it's really important that we don't make it a nationalist issue, that we also revive that there is a Muslim issue here, because the whole reason why Israel in the very beginning was founded was in order to curtail the Muslim unity within the Middle East. And when we talk about curtailing the Muslim unity within the Middle East, was number one, whether politically or economically. So this doesn't this doesn't necessarily mean that we can't include the economical part of it, because they recognize that any nation that is um, standing on economical power, it later will also force you to accept their not only military but also their principle. Also the principle. The Western principles were really going beyond borders, was really because the economical power was later bringing globalization, and then later the consumers, they would start buying the products as not only as a product to use, but they would see it that these countries are more advanced. These countries are the countries that have the secret of success. The secret to success. So therefore, in order for us to be at their economical power, their political power, their military power, that means we have to adopt their way of life, their culture, their ideology, and the list goes on and on. And that's how you become a consumer without you recognizing. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he tells us, حَتَّى يَكُونَ الدِّينُ, for what? Lillah. So deen will become for lillah. How is that going to be possible? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَعِدُّ لَهُمْ مَسْتَطَعْتُم مِّن قُوَّةٍ. There's no way. You have to prepare yourself, whether we're talking about economically, or whether we're talking about even with science, or whether we're talking about education, whether we're talking about even psychologically, physically. You need to be strong, because you cannot whatsoever make the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala become a universal and a public in a global matter until you yourself actually show that the rest of the world that you are a powerful global power, global pressure. That's when people will little by little will see in you that you are carrying the seed and even the secret to success. That's why even historically, when the Muslims were advanced politically, militarily, in education, all of that, you had seen that the West was migrating, and they were going to study in Al-Andalus, because they were seeing that Al-Andalus at the time, and in fact, they would even learn Arabic, they would learn poetry, and many would convert to Islam and so forth, because they had seen that that is what shows advancement. So even if, whether you're a pathologist, whether you're specialized in economy, specialized in politics, chemistry, whatever it is, in order for you to actually use that to advance the ummah, you yourself master that. If you're good at economy, well, master it. Get your PhD. beyond. Put in a lot of research. That's how you will advance the ummah itself. In chemistry, yes, in chemistry. In biology, yes, in biology. In all of that. That's how you can advance. But at the same time, it's not the only thing is not to just advance within the system, but also challenge the system even within your specialty. Keep in mind that your target is حتى يكون الدين for what? لله. Challenge the system that your main reason is to lay out the principle of Islam. Lay out the principle of Islam, whether in your appearance as a muhajjaba, or whether it's even in challenging the system, if that's what you're maybe, in chemistry, that's probably pretty hard. But if we're talking about literature or probably talking about philosophy, that is definitely needed. All right, we're going to get started. فَالصَّالِحَاتُ قَانِتَاتٌ حَافِظَاتٌ لِلْغَيْبِ بِمَا حَفِظَ اللَّهُ. We did that one. وَاللَّاتِي تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ فَعِظُوهُنَّ وَاهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ. So وَاللَّاتِي, and we talked about it last time, and we said that فَالصَّالِحَات, and who's a salihah? We said it's the person or the woman the woman that is basically pious. So we talked about how here it was talking about a rijal and here talking about a salihah. And we talked about how rijal was basically emphasizing that, yes, it is part of the man instinct. And also that in order for a person, I think I told you about the man that was, I think it was like October 10, when everything after Philistine happening. So October 10. Exactly. And when the guy was challenging, he's like, "Hey, can a non-Muslim man date a Muslim woman?" And I said, "No, a Muslim man cannot date a Muslim woman." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, that's because a Muslim woman regards that the Muslim man is basically supposed to be in charge." And he said, "Well, why consider that?" I said, "Well, that's because that's part of your nature." And he said, "Well, in America, no man is going to be controlling a woman. No man is going to be controlling a woman." So I said, "Well, that's the point. That's one of the points. If he cannot be a man in the household, then why should a Muslim woman, actually marry a man that cannot even be a man in his own household?" So what a Muslim woman is looking for is a man. Is a man. She is looking for a man. If he can't even be a man in his own household, then why on earth does she want to marry him if he can't even be a man in his own household? Right? Yeah. So Islam will tell you. I had to say it.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
You use the dina as well, right?
Yeah, I did use that one. The D and A I M. Yep. فالصالحات. So yeah, she remembered it. She remembered it. Right. So فالصالحات قانتات. So this is right there. It's basically an informative clause. So فالصالحات الصالحة.
You actually taught us how to argue these things.
Never let anybody shake your confidence in your deen. No, use the point that they're trying to bring and boom, throw it at them. Right? الصالحات قانتات. So what is القانتة? Now, here's one thing. Oh, we did actually talk about this one. We did talk about this one. We said, is this actually referring to being qanita, that is obedient to the husband, or is it being obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? We talked about it, right? Did we? Yeah. حافظات للغيب, preserving privacies
Khalid, I know it's not here in Surah Al-Imran, the same thing. Can you explain it as somebody who's
حفظ الغيب. حفظ الغيب in general, الغيب is anything that is unseen.
Okay.
But this is not talking about حفظ الغيب as malaika and everything that is unseen and jannah, malaika, jinn, etc. Okay, this is not talking about that. This is talking about الغيب when the person is not present. All right, so when you are not present, for example, or your husband is not present, you would preserve the husband's privacies. Now, here's one thing is that you don't see the same relating to men. So it wasn't emphasizing that men should do the same in terms of women, even though there is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, had actually said that the worst of the women, and of course the worst of the men, of course, are the ones where the husband and the wife, they would, let's say, unreveal each other. And what happened was is that the Prophet ﷺ was within the group, and one of the women had actually said, yes, the women actually speak about the private things in detail, that's basically what they would talk about. They would go in detail about their husbands, and the wives would describe certain details and private details. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith that the worst of the people where the man would uncover or reveal what his basically the private matters about his wife, and the same thing, the wife reveal about the private matters about the husband. We're talking about intimacy. So when we're talking about intimacy, that anything that relates to that's supposed to be completely private and not something that is public information in any way. The only times that you can reveal such information is if you're probably seeking maybe treatment. If you're seeking treatment, you're going probably medical treatment, etc., then that's a different story. All right. Seeking treatment is different. You want to make sure that you, as much as you can, you preserve the privacy and confidentiality of that matter. You don't expose it. Same thing for him. So حافظات للغيب, two things. الغيب can be العهدية and can be الاستغراقية. Okay, so what does that mean? العهدية would mean in where we're talking about a specific item, and it can also be الاستغراقية to mean that it's an inclusive So حافظات للغيب, and here we're talking about one is الغيب here to mean the particular intimacy issues that she's preserving all of that, or is this talking about a more inclusive ghaib in where anything that involves the husband and wife, that the wife is preserving it and keeping it private? So it's definitely a lot more inclusive. So what kind of things should she be hiding? Number one is things that relate to the person's deen. Okay, that the person's deen, unless he's murtad, that's a different story. She's okay, but the person's deen, shortcomings in their deen, don't go exposing it. The person has shortcomings in the deen. Maybe they're not concerned about their sunan, perhaps they're not reading Quran as frequently as should be, etc. Okay. Number two is that things that relate to their health, maybe smelly feet or whatever it is, don't expose these matters about their health or probably personal hygiene or personal things. These things, whether it's for the wife or whether it's for the husband, these things are confidential. You were exposed to it as a wife, you know that information, well, don't expose it to others. It's confidential. Number three, again, deen, nafs, aql. And in terms of aql, if, for example, he's got some issues, attitudes that you don't like, don't expose his attitudes. Not even to, yeah, A lot of men have attitudes. Or is it a lot of women have attitudes?
Both.
Women have more attitudes? Okay.
I would say both, but
If I were to actually say that more women had attitudes, that would be called misogynist. Go ahead. What do you think?
but no, I meant like if you're having a problem with his attitude, you don't expose it.
I'll get to that one. In general, لا يحب الله الجهر بالسوء من القول إلا من ظلم. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like that anybody would announce any evil unless you are abused or unless you're oppressed. So in general, everything is supposed to be concealed. Everything is supposed to be confidential unless you're seeking treatment or a solution for a matter, but you turn to people that have the capacity to help you in that regards. Okay, so let's, hypothetically speaking, a woman comes and she says, well, my husband has an issue of bad breath. Okay, so she basically goes to seek treatment and goes to the doctor and says, well, he's got bad breath. Okay, so then the doctor might say, well, let's see if we're looking at H. pylori, let's see if there's an issue with the gums, let's see what the problem is to figure that problem. That's halal. Okay, that's seeking treatment. But if you're telling people, it's like he's got bad breath, I tell him to floss his teeth, but he doesn't listen, etc. And it could be not even related to flossing. It could be related to something in the gut. But you thought that, oh, I'm here trying to create public pressure to make him succumb to me. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would tell you, no, hafidatul lil ghayb bima hafidallah. Okay, so if there is something wrong with the health, something wrong with the mental part, maybe he's got an attitude, maybe he's just slow in processing things or whatever it is. Okay, you find that a lot in men, in where they can take longer in processing ideas, decision making, a lot longer than women. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made them the awliya. And without you thinking, you're like, okay, I've been talking to him about it for 5 months now, and until now, he's still processing the idea. To you as a woman, it's like, how long does it take? Just say yes or say no or whatever it is. It doesn't need much. But to him, he's just taking so long to process the idea because with men, they think differently. They think differently. And you just have to acknowledge that their psychological, their mental structure, their brain anatomy works differently. So therefore, you sometimes, and I always recommend this, women are from Venus and men are from Mars. So many times women would come to me and say, hey, I'm having troubles with my husband. We've been married for this long. He's not understanding me. I'm seeking him to give me attention. I'm asking him to tell me these kind of words. And he's being so slow. It's a blah, 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 all these different things. And right away, she would usually associate it that it's her the only person dealing with that problem. And she would think that the problem is with him, not necessarily that it's not you the problem, and certainly not him. It's just that you have different anatomies, different dynamics of how your body and your brain work. So you just have to recognize that. You just have to recognize that. And once you recognize it, you would then learn how to communicate, how to listen, not to yourself, but how to listen to him as well. How to listen, not necessarily to what he's saying, because men don't speak, by the way. Men don't speak. You would be like, what do you want? And he's like, I need whatever is right now suitable for the time. And they're like, yes, what is it? Just prepare me anything. Like what? Anything to eat. Yes, I know. But what do you want? You put something. I don't like that. Well, you should have told me what you wanted from the beginning. It would have made my life easier and your life easier. It doesn't need, rocket physics. but they don't know how to express themselves.
Yes.
They don't know how to express themselves. Women, it was really strange that they put a group of women in a room. They weren't allowed to speak to themselves or to one another at least. And they put a group of men also to be in this room. They weren't supposed to talk to one another. The men were thinking about sports and intimacy. At least that's what they said. For women, when they were asked what they were thinking about all the different conversations that they had done, what they should have said, and what all the, all these different things.
So they are
She's
what?
even when she's alone, she's doing a conversation.
Yes. I do that a
She's
lot.
having a conversation even when she's alone. She's not allowed to talk to anybody. She's conversing with herself. She's communicating, and she's fighting with herself and fighting with others. And she'll go into all these debates, and she's just sitting by herself, but she's still holding a conversation.
That's
So,
just us.
well, there you go.
You like talking about it?
I'm talking about you. Okay, some people are really taking it right there.
But okay, how about when you have like an issue and you want to talk like close friends or sister,
So
you just
as
kind of
much
wanna
as
let
you
yourself.
can, I like that. If you wanted an advice there, you want to seek somebody that one has the deen, number two recognizes the confidentiality of the matter, and number three, you want to seek someone that also has the experience. Okay. Um, I personally recommend learn how to read about the matter as much as you can. You will be surprised, especially right now with online being available, and you will be surprised a lot of things are really needing a lot of more than just experience. So right now, hey, before you even jump, right now, Chat GPT, go and ask. They'll give you different tips. As much as you can, stay confidential, even if you want to ask a sheikh. As much as you can, preserve your privacy. It's so common that you would trust somebody with your information, and later they'd be the ones to stab you with this private information. You thought that you trusted them with this information, and they'd be the ones to actually stab you with it. So I would really recommend, as much as you can, stay confidential. And one thing that really have to learn how to use and how to grow. Can you give her a chair to put on her feet? I think she's struggling with that. Or you know what? Why don't you take that? Why don't you take that stand? It's okay حاجة هي تجيب لك حاجة.
هذا عربي أي حاجة نمشي له. No problem.
حطي رجلك حاجة، حطي رجلك حاجة.
نمشي إنه شوي تنتحرك شوي.
طيب ماشي. Okay.
ما نقدرش نطول بالظهر.
Okay حاجة. What was I saying?
Privacy.
Privacy. So as much as you can, stay as confidential as you can, because you want to make sure that you control the information and not other people have it. And I think we have to revive learning how to listen to other people's problems and experiences. It doesn't have to be where you would just hear it from the actual person, but hear other problems. By hearing other problems, you will learn how and what to avoid. And I think we had really lost how to appreciate experiences. It's really important to revive such wisdoms through learning those experiences, those problems, and how to avoid those consequences before they actually come at you. The other parts that we talked about, deen, nafs, aql, ird, different different things that somebody might have in terms of whether it's intimacy or, of course, private matters. These things are supposed to be completely private. Don't expose it.
So who do you go to with those type of questions?
Number one, number one, I think it's really important for us to learn about the different specialists out there, especially medical specialists. I think many don't really know the real relationship between a lot of the different problems that we have and their correlation with probably different things in our body. It's finding the right person sometimes to educate you, but right now it's so easy to get access to educate yourself about the different things about our medical issues, our health, etc., and learning about it. So you do your own education. Right now, things have become so easy to get access to such information. So by reading about it, you'll be capable of getting to the resources that are going to help you. A lot of the different matters, we are just so ignorant about our women's health or about men's health, etc. And it could be just a simple thing, a simple treatment, but we don't actually recognize it until it really becomes at the very far end. We don't even talk about it till it becomes something that we can't live with it whatsoever. And it becomes sometimes a lot harder to treat when it was really just an easy thing to treat it. It was just an easy thing. So we have to educate ourselves about health, educate ourselves even about mental health as well. When you educate yourself, read about it. Take each and every single day, some time, spend some time to read about such things. And you will see that a lot of what you are going through is not unprecedented. It's not just you. You will see that there are a lot of patterns of people going through exactly the same thing that you're going through. And you will then get to learn how to solve your different problems. So I think that that's a really important. So we talked about family, the in-laws, the problems with the in-laws, those are really common. I think especially with the Indo-Pakistani communities, I think they really have to learn how to separate themselves more. I think they're so intertwined. The in-laws, they would live with everyone else, and then the in-laws are intervening in the woman's matters, and then she's the in-law is probably even dictating how to cook and what to do, and there's no privacy at all. And I think we have to learn that in all the books of fiqh, the right of privacy is actually a sacred thing. You want to reduce problems, you have to understand that it is part of our nature that we have to have our privacy. We have to have our sacred zone, our area really separate. The woman doesn't have to always go to the family gatherings, your family gatherings. Your family's gatherings are your family's gatherings. Once in a while, she can go, but she doesn't have to go each and every single time. Same thing. Your husband, he doesn't have to come to every single family gathering of yours. Giving your space and separating your space from his space, the more in-laws intervention and the more integration, the more tension and the more friction expect to happen. We're human beings. You want to reduce the friction. Well, simple. Reduce the interaction. It's that easy. Reduce the interaction. Don't, why are we thinking that, oh, we somehow created some utopian idea that, oh, it's because we're putting in love. I'm sorry, every single person is supposed to have their sacred space respected. The more we share common spaces, the more expect frictions to happen. If you're putting too many people within one area, then you're actually connecting so many people together. And when you're connecting so many people together, you're stepping on each other's toes. when you're stepping on each other's toes, expect a scream and expect somebody to push and shove. It's that simple. Oh, so and the same thing when we're talking about money. The final thing, money. So the right of money, and also the preservation of the husband's privacy in terms of money. So the money and where what he's making and whether he's stingy or whether he's not stingy, all of that, that's a private matter. You might agree or disagree on his money management, but don't expose it. Don't expose his stinginess. That's something that you were capable of seeing. Don't expose it. Unless it was something probably that you needed to seek support or help, maybe involve your father. But to be honest, avoid even involving your family. Make that as really the last resort. You know, when you involve your family, even if you had forgotten, they will never forget.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
They'll never forget. You and it's so it is, you know, it can happen all the time. And where the husband and the wife, they'll get in a fight with each other, they'll stop talking to each other a day or two, and then they'll end up with probably and really, you know, they'll end up, you know, he's like probably pretending to need coffee, even though he doesn't need coffee, but he's just trying to somehow bump into her or something like that. Or she probably doesn't even need to go to his room or whatever, but then she's pretending like I'm bumping into his leg or whatever it is. But it's really just trying to create some kind of a pathway to bring about reconciliation. That the husband and the wife, they'll eventually have this gravity to come back to each other as much as you can. Don't share your problems with your family. Your mom, she will see you as she's my daughter or he's my son, and there she'll basically see you always that she's not pretty enough for my son, or he's not enough man for my daughter. And of course, she's always going to be centered that my daughter's always the best, the smartest, the cutest, etc. And if it's her son, my son, oh, he's basically deserving all the best, and etc. And I see this all the time. I do matchmaking.
Except my
And
mom.
except your mom, she doesn't see you that way. You got a problem then.
My husband first.
You got a problem, right?
No, if his mom and dad is not here, that's why you support.
I think our mom, my mom is very traditional.
Your
so
mom's
it's all
traditional?
about the husband first.
It's all the
So
husband?
she's like, wow, I didn't raise you this way. So if you go to her,
Okay.
you're not gonna go nowhere.
Yeah, what if you have biased parents, like very, like not biased parents, my bad,
Very
like
traditional.
parents
That will tell you you just gotta obey your husband.
basically you come from like a very religious or like traditional
Okay.
background where they will tell you for what it is.
You know, I'll tell you one thing. I think traditional families, from what I had seen, traditional families tend to pressure their daughter, be patient, be patient, be patient, and sometimes her voice gets unheard, to be honest, and this is very, very common. And although, yes, definitely, we should be encouraging our daughters to be patient, but sometimes I think there were cases where I had seen that the woman's complaints were unheard of until they were extremely late. Although, indeed, those are very rare cases. I mean, very rare cases. Does it go to, you know, a case of homicide or anything like that? But still, one case is too many.
Yes.
Are you annoyed from the sound?
No, of course
Okay.
not. I'm just stretching.
This woman, you guys,
She's
this woman, you guys, is a salihah woman. She's barakah. She used to come to Gems of Light when it was closer to her house, walking. And she would come, doesn't speak English, and she would sit. Many times, she would just fall asleep. And she would stand
and do the
and fall asleep and just do dhikr. And I would say, Haja, are you getting tired, ya Haja? And she would be, yeah, but that's okay. I'm like, so Haja, when you come, you don't understand English. So what do you come for? She's like, at least I know that the malaika are surrounding the place. Wallahi al-azim.
It's the best thing.
She would be like, at least I would know the malaika are surrounding the place. That way, when the malaika would make the dua, they would include me in it. صالحة صالحة الله يحفظها يا ربي.
So reducing interactions, you also, can you talk about the woman not getting off the path of decision making? Because that's where a lot of fire.
Well, I don't want to say getting off the decision making because
helping, but not.
Well, wait a minute. Here's one thing is that women are definitely a lot more educated than before. Okay, that's one thing. I think we have to put that within the data before we actually start making the final the final decision on how we want to integrate this. But at the same time, I think sometimes, yes, you might have certain data, you might have certain education. So it's really important that when we want to say, well, don't integrate in this decision, that's actually not accurate. Being part of the decision making is important.
Yes, being part,
but imposing your ideas is what is dangerous. If you want to impose your idea, then that's what's dangerous, because that would basically that would go against the idea of your husband is qawwam. So you definitely have the right for your visions to be heard, and you definitely have the right to not be suppressed from your ideas being heard. But at the same time, you also don't have the right to impose your ideas. And imposing to me, no, if you don't, what I mean by imposing, for example, if you don't, let's say we wanted to buy a house. You said, I like the house in Brooklyn Park. He was thinking, the house in Brooklyn Park is too expensive for us. We're going to go to New Hope. Okay, for example. But you insisted, hey, I want the house in Brooklyn Park. And of course, if he doesn't, you wanted the house in New Hope or whatever. Okay. But if he doesn't do it your way, you would basically start having a low face. You'd start getting angry. You start putting tantrums. You'll start basically bringing up all the different things that happened in the history of how you struggled just because you want to support him. And now he's not supporting you and blah, blah, blah. And then you're going to bring up all his history of how he just doesn't appreciate and how you had invested so much in making this happen, and now you are basically not getting your way. That is imposing your idea. That's playing politics, literally. So your idea has been heard. Why the house in New Hope was a good house, or Brooklyn Park, or whatever it is, that it was spacious, square foot is great, the garage is indoor, whatever it is, and the driveway is just outstanding, whatever it is. Okay, you laid out all the different arguments why the house in New Hope was just the perfect house, and especially that the kitchen was actually just exactly what you had dreamed of all your life. And of course, you might say, well, wait a minute, I'm the one that's working in the kitchen. You don't care about what the kitchen what amenities the kitchen might have, etc. But you care about it, but he doesn't care about it. To him, well, yeah, I at least, we're looking at this. What he is looking as important at considering the importance of whatever it is totally different than you. To you, kitchen.
And how it looks.
Exactly. And how it looks, how it's presented, right? That's to you what matters. What matters to him is probably more garage space or money, and how much the cost is, all right, and how much that's looking on our budget, and of course, or even yard work and all of that. So he's looking at it from a different perspective. Okay, but here's one thing: you had put in your view, you had don't throw a tantrum. At the end of the day, is that you were heard. Try to push towards it without creating a drama.
Yeah,
what we mean, some men what controlling?
Yes.
Well, that's part of being man.
No, like in terms of like, okay, but I'm also living there as well.
Well, yes, but at the end of the day, that's why he's al-Qawwam.
So then what,
It,
what
it,
exactly can I
al-Qawwam
control?
is part of control. That's the whole idea.
Oh
He
my
can't
God.
be Qawwam if he's not
Generation,
controlling.
this word you like again. Controlling. This is give us like headache.
No, that's part of being a man. And by the way, it's part of your nature that when you feel that this man is the man,
He's the man, but he doesn't have to be controlling.
well, then he can't be a man if he's not controlling. If he's losing control, he's not the man anymore.
Can he be a little bit gentle? I guess that's what
Be
he wants.
gentle. I mean, that's can he be a little bit gentle?
Yeah,
Well,
like-
here's the thing.
We have a problem.
People, let me tell you one thing. It's so easy to assume the level of control and gentleness. It's so easy for us to say, well, okay, you should be here, less controlling, and you should be gentle. It's so easy for us to shape what we think the best looking utopian theory of the best personality. I know this is a really, maybe I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. There's a Palestinian, okay, sorry, I shouldn't be saying this one, but there's a Palestinian proverb that goes as follows. Everybody's saliva tastes sweet in their own mouth. It's disgusting to say, but
I don't think so. Yeah.
sorry about that, everybody. But that's the thing. What is sweet to you is disgusting to someone else.
Okay.
You just have to keep that in mind. What your level of control and gentleness is, it doesn't necessarily have to be the utopian definition. That's the point, is that people have their personalities. If we didn't have these different personalities in what we would regard as the best and what is perfect, etc., then we wouldn't actually have built this whole world. We wouldn't have actually had a man marry a woman. We would have had a woman marry a woman. For sure, they're going to be more compatible.
No. I feel like about that.
And what I mean by more compatible, of course, I'm not pushing towards that, but what I mean by more compatible, at least in personality, they're going to be the same.
So drama.
But the whole idea is to complete each other's gaps. We're different, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this whole universe fill the gaps of the other. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yeah,
Exactly. It's you filling up his gap and him filling the gap, and that's how we complete one another. So sometimes, in order for us to ask the other person to compromise, listen. Maybe you should start with compromising.
It's liberating.
There's no way that you're like, okay, it's time for him to compromise. That actually means you're expecting that every single time the person has to compromise with what you want. He'll definitely will ask both sides. Let me explain it this way. If you're in a fight, you're standing on the right side and he's standing on the left side. In order to bring both of you together, I'm going to ask him to move left. I'm going to ask you to move right. Or, in fact, to get closer, you're both taking different stances. But if I'm asking you to move farther right and him farther left, you had just maintained the distance. But you're going to take one step left, one step right, etc., for both of you to take opposing stances. If he's going to be controlling and you want to be controlling too, it's not going to work.
No, it's not about controlling. Like as a woman wants controlling. Like for me, I like the man to be like stronger and has a word. But some stuff, there is some men that when they want to say something, they just the way, they makes you feel it's my way.
At the end of the day, people have different personalities. Even when you look at Sahaba, even when you look at prophets, take a look at Prophet Musa alayhi salam, a completely different personality than Prophet Ibrahim. Completely different personality. You You look at Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, he's a person that is easygoing, a person that is very down to earth, very just extremely forbearing. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called him awahun halim. What is awah? Awah is kathira ta'wah, a person that is constantly crying, a person that is extremely sensitive. Al halim is forbearing. You look at Prophet Musa alayhi salam. No, what did he do? He comes back and the tablets and just throws them. He just had enough. Well, I don't want to say he doesn't have patience because he's a prophet. We can't say he doesn't have patience because he's a prophet. You know, he's infallible. But at the end of the day, is that the reason why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would emphasize one prophet of a certain attribute and another prophet with a different attribute is really because they don't have it all at the same level. Same thing when you look at Sahaba. Umar ibn Khattab is totally different in his controlling, where Umar, لست بالخب ولا الخب يخدعني. I'm not stupid, and the stupid would never manipulate me. It's like, you can't manipulate me. You may see me religious, but it doesn't mean I'm stupid. I'm awake, I'm alert, and I've got all my eyes to make sure that you will not manipulate me. That's Umar ibn Khattab. But you got other Sahaba that weren't necessarily at that level of this firmness that other Sahaba were in. They weren't necessarily at the level of firmness. They were more easygoing. So if that's the same thing with Sahaba, let alone with the general man, it's the same thing. People have different personalities. You just have to learn. Remember, in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not change the situation that you're in unless you work on yourself. How can I deal with a personality like that? What should I do? How can I make this relationship happen? How can I get him to understanding? Trust me, butting heads is not the way.
Yeah, patient.
Butting heads is not the way. Sometimes to actually learn how to compromise, to learn how to have your voice heard is important. Okay. واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن. What is واللاتي? And واللاتي is referring to the women. تخافون, you fear. نشوزهن. What is in nushuz? In nushuz, in Lugha Arabiya, actually means to be outcasting, to go outside. But this is not talking about some kind of a hill going up, but this is actually talking about some sort of resilience, some form of refusing to, I guess, compromise. It actually comes from the root nashaza, and nashaza means to stick out. So the sticking out in what? You know, it's the man is trying to put things under structure, under control, but then this woman right there, this wife, is basically going to shoes. What does that even look like? In the shoes can be displayed in different ways. Ready? The shoes. Now, it's like I'm teaching girls how to do nushuz, right?
We're nushuz.com. Keep going.
Nushuz.com, okay. How is nushuz done? Nushuz could be, he's basically, for example, calling her to bed and she's, refusing. Or she's basically giving him, a bad look. He came in from work and it's time for him to get lunch, dinner, whatever it is, and she's not even preparing it. She's like, Ma, no food today. Self-service. Right? Self-service. All right, no food today. Or basically, talking back. Of course, the worst is actually going is actually going physical. That's beyond. This is not nushuz. This is beyond nushuz. Okay, or probably swearing, or probably putting down his personality, things like you're not man enough to do this, etc., or putting down the person, attacking the person, refusing to compromise. To, let's say, for example, he decided that that's it, we're going to choose the house in Brooklyn Park. Okay. And she says, well, if you actually want to buy the house in Brooklyn Park, you know what? I'm not moving to Brooklyn Park, and I'm not going to go there, and I'm not going to sign the paperwork or whatever it is and all of that. So that's basically nushuz. It's like, agreed, we would make the decision. I heard your voice. I heard what you said. I understand you like the kitchen in New Hope, but we basically had decided at the end, I know you don't like the idea fully, but at the end, that I had made the decision. I thought about it, etc. So to basically stand an outcast, I'm not going to accept, and etc., and start to, I guess, be rebellious, that's in nushuz. How does the husband deal with that? What was the story behind that? So there was a story. The story was a sahabiya. She basically came to the Prophet ﷺ, and what she was complaining of was that her husband had actually slapped her on the face, to the point that the slap really showed on the face. In other words, it was really marking. So she came along with her father. So the Prophet ﷺ had said, well, you have the right to slap him back. Right? So there they go, scurry to slap the husband. Wait a minute, until Jibreel comes. Angel Jibreel comes and reveals this ayah. Reveals this ayah. وَلَاتِ تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ فَعِظُوهُنَّ وَهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ وَاضْرِبُوهُنَّ. Those that you fear or basically did go into rebellious behavior, then do al-wa'z, which is good wording, and وَهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, which is to abandon the beds, basically. That is a metaphor for intimacy. وَاضْرِبُوهُنَّ, and strike them. We're going to talk about each and every single one. So the Prophet ﷺ brings them back and says, I wanted one rule, but Jibreel wanted something else. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is, wanted something else. That same day, 70 women, and it doesn't have to be 70. It's not like here's person number one. Sometimes this is a metaphor in Lugha Arabiya to mean a large number of people. A large number of women, she said, had come to the household, to the Prophet ﷺ's wives, complaining that their husbands had beaten them on that day. They came, what? Because of the ayah. So what did they understand? Well, they understood that this ayah was giving them basically, so every single man had said, well, I gave you a good word, and yeah, right, straightforward, you're just going to get beaten. They got beaten. So that's when the Prophet ﷺ actually said in the hadith, خير النساء إذا نظرت إليها سرتك وإذا أمرتها أطاعتك وإذا غبت عنها حفظتك في نفسك ومالك. The Prophet ﷺ in this hadith, that the best of the women are basically the women that when you would look at them, they would basically bring you delight. And when you would order them, they would obey you. And when you are absent, they would preserve your privacy and preserve herself and basically her wealth. Well, there's another important quote here where the Prophet ﷺ actually said, وَلَا يَضْرِبُ خِيَارَكُمْ, and the best of you does not beat. Ata ibn Abi Rabah, he actually viewed this quote, وَلَا يَضْرِبُ خِيَارَكُمْ, and the best of you does not beat, that is not necessarily abrogating this ayah per se, but that was considering that, yes, although permissible, but it was that the quote that the Prophet ﷺ saying was actually considering that that is only to be for those extreme cases, rare extreme cases. And even in the rare extreme cases, the best of you would not engage in that type in the relationship between the husband and the wife. So if we're talking about an extreme case, what does الضرب actually look like? The Prophet ﷺ actually said that in the farewell khutbah, he had said, and this is important to keep in mind, because when we're speaking about the husband's rights, it's important to mention. So here we go. I'm here quoting Al-Qurtubi, and he had actually said ضرب الأدب غير المبرح, the ضرب of discipline that is not excruciating or that is not harmful, which is, and he explains, that it does not break bones, it does not abuse or inflict severe pain and harm to the body, and it does not leave any bruises, such as in any way of having the ecchymosis on the body. And that is basically what is meant by. In other words, the English translation, the definition of beating, is not whatsoever an accurate translation, because beating basically means you're leaving a mark, you're leaving a bruise, you're puncturing the body, you're bleeding the body, etc. So all of that is haram. Therefore, to translate that as, yes, it's Islam permitting beating, that is not accurate at all. Can you see Hudayfa, please? He's going to be in there. So in Islam, the definition of darb is different than beating. Now, فَعِظُوهُنْ, the question is, does the husband have to go through each and every single one of these, or can they actually go through this one and then use al-awad? What is al-awad? Al-awad is basically to speak in a way, is basically to speak in a way that is bringing at least the heart closer to abiding by what is good. So probably reminding her of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, probably reminding her how important it is to keep the family intact, reminding her probably of how they're supposed to be together in one bond, making this happen. All these different things, that's silwaf, can be in different ways. It's like, I'm just reminding you, I care about you, I love you, we don't want to do this, remember that we're all together trying to make this happen, I don't mean to hurt you, etc. All these different things. This is الوعظ. الهجران في المضجع. الهجر is to abandon. Now, scholars had differences of opinions on whether the husband can do الهجر from al-bayt or not. What does that mean? To actually abandon the home. To leave the home. Let's say he gets angry, and what does he do? He basically goes to a hotel in order to stay away from the woman.
Is that allowed?
Differences of opinions between scholars. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned in the hadith narrated by Mu'adh ibn Abi Sufyan that the man should not لا يهجر إلا في البيت, that he should not abandon except at home. Some scholars took that as literally that he should not leave إلا في البيت. Okay, let me explain. Let me word that right. That he should not abandon except at home. In other words, what does that mean? He's just abandoning il-madja. He's just abandoning intimacy. Giving a cold shoulder, sleeping on the bed, but he's turning his back. okay, turning his back against her. He's probably, trying to somehow flirt with him, but he's not even responding, etc. Then in that situation, okay, that's al-hajr fil madja. Oh, other scholars regarded that no, al-hajr fil madja is not the only thing. In other words, he doesn't have to just abandon intimacy, but he can abandon the house if, those are some scholars, if he considered, or based on his evaluation, that will probably let her feel the momentum of how her nushuz or how her rebellious behavior is basically, giving me some time away from each other so we're not butting heads because she just won't stay quiet. And when I'm probably in my room or in the room, she's just, banging at the door. No, you're going to listen to me. She's just doing all that. And she's just, and of course, when she's angry, especially during her moment of hormones, she's like, nope, she's going to be right there banging at the door and yelling and screaming. And he's just trying to stay quiet as much as he can. But he knows I cannot be patient any longer. And I know that if she continues to blah, 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 she's probably saying like 1,000 words every second. And I don't know how to hold myself. I don't want to get too angry and probably go the wrong direction with my physical arm because then my hand is going to start talking, not my mouth. So in that situation, he decides, I'm taking a break because she cannot stay quiet. It happens. So this is a considerable opinion that is permissible because she just, if I were to stay close, that's probably going to escalate into a different dangerous escalation, which definitely we don't want.
Is there a limit to that then? I mean,
Is there a limit? That's a very good question. Scholars had differences of opinions on what is the limit. I personally do not recommend that. For a couple hours, it's good. But with my experience, the more you abandon, the farther away the person gets used to you being away. They get used to you being away, and then the hearts will just turn down. In Arabic, we say بعيد عن العين بعيد عن القلب. If they're far away from your sight, they're far away from your heart. Little by little, when you're around each other, it kind of creates that heat. We're around each other. So, okay, maybe take some time away. I don't know, go to coffee shop or whatever to kind of relax, kind of get yourself kind of calm down, and she calm down. That's a different story. But to take that for days and months, trust me, it's going to be the simple ABC recipe of removing each and every single one of you from each other's hearts. You're going to get colder and colder and colder, and then you're not going to look back again. That's it. You will get so used to him being away, and he'll get so used to you being away. And then just when you thought you're going to long for each other again, no. You're just going to create more and more separation. Scholars had differences of opinions. Some related it to that it doesn't exceed 4 months. Others had related it that it should not exceed to a fitna. Others had related until she would abide and leave nushuz. So each one from those that had actually considered that was permissible, because the other scholars, they regarded that no, that's not even permissible, because they took the wording of that hadith, وَلَا يَهْجُرْ إِلَّا فِي الْبَيْتِ, they took it literally. The most ironic, I want you to listen to this one. The most ironic interpretation, although it's in the books of Tafseer, and I needed to mention it just so that we would learn that not everything that you might see in a book of Tafseer that you necessarily say, I've read it in a book of Tafseer, therefore we should take it, was actually the opinion that was chosen by Tabari And he said, what that means is to tie her the way you would tie an animal. I know. What? Look at what Ibn al-Arabi had actually said about this very ironic quote. So here, quote, I'm quoting Al-Qurtubi, and he said, وَقَدْ رَدَّ عَلَيْهِ الْقَاضِي أبو بكر بن العربي في أحكامه, which is أحكام القرآن. فقال يا لها من هفوة من عالم بالقرآن والسنة. What does that mean? He said, Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi, who's actually a Maliki scholar, he said, and he had quoted and he had said in his book, Ahkam al-Quran, which is almost in 5 volumes, and he said, and what a grave mistake from a scholar that knows the Quran and Sunnah. That's a huge mistake. How can you at all consider that that was at all to be in any way an interpretation for what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said on treating a wife? Exactly. But I wanted to quote that because many times people would think, well, I read it in a Tabari. That's not enough. Look at how this scholar had rejected. And many scholars actually were astonished and had written rebuttals. It's like, this is not acceptable. This cannot be of anything that is accepted from Quran and Sunnah to treat a wife like you would treat an animal.
Did they have a dalil for this?
He did well. In لغة عربية, الهجر, to do hajr for an animal is basically to mean to tie it up. So this scholar, he basically took the word and not the compound word. Okay? And you guys, even if we're talking about a scholar, scholars, لكل جواد كبوة ولكل عالم هفوة. Every single scholar can have a mistake. And every single knight, Knight, can sometimes fall off their horse. And لكل سيف نبوة. And for every single sword, they might miss a strike at one time. That's extremely important to keep in mind. So not because you would see something that is quoted in a tafsir or in a book of fiqh, that doesn't necessarily make it that is what Islam teaches. Okay, that's not necessarily what we would call Islam teaches, but we would absolutely. So that's why you would say this response right there is like, يا لها من هفوة. الهفوة, it's like, what a mistake, what a grave mistake, where a scholar like Tabari, who's a scholar of Quran and Sunnah, would at all consider that as even any considerable quote. So الهجر في المضجع is a compound word. It's a compound word. You can't take al-hajr alone without the rest of the compound word. You have to take it that it is to basically use the whole compound word to abandon bed. To abandon bed, it doesn't mean that I'm finding a different bed per se, but this is to actually say here al-madja is basically intimacy. So I'm turning my back. So why even abandon the wife, and why not her abandon the husband to teach him a lesson?
That's what we do today.
That's what you do today. La ilaha illallah. That's actually haram. Allah yahdiki. That's what we do today. La ilaha illallah. So let me explain it. Let me explain it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by the way, when you see al-hajr fil madja, the one to pay the price is not only the woman, even the man is paying the price, even if he's married more than more than one. Because just by abandoning, which he's, trying to flirt, trying to get his attention, etc., and it happens all the time. It happens all the time. You're the weakest thing. The Prophet ﷺ had told you that in the hadith, that the weakest thing in the weakest fitna, the strongest fitna, let's say the weakest the man gets in, the weakest point for a man, and the strongest fitna on a man is women. There's no fitna ashad ala rijal min al-nisa, and especially if it's his own halal. So technically, when he's abandoning her bed, he's actually
Losing.
no. Well, yes, he's losing, but he too is getting weaker. He too is getting weaker. And not only is he getting weaker, but that's also to bring both of them. Her need, her intimate need is getting stronger, and his need is also getting stronger. Simple anatomy.
Yes.
Simple anatomy. It doesn't need physics. It needs medicine. Right? Just simple thing. And that is to draw them together. So wahjuruhunna fil madajah is also to discipline him too. It's like you two got to learn how to be patient. If your honor, your masculinity is getting you to abandoning the woman, all right, I want you to be next to her, and let's see how strong you'll get. Right? Let's see how strong you'll get next to her.
But couldn't he just marry another woman?
Even if he does, even if he does, even if he does. Let me tell you, ladies, a joke. Oh, wait. Let me tell you a joke. So a man that was pro-polygamy and a woman that's not pro-polygamy, of course, her husband, he was basically open about him marrying a second wife. So she wanted to convince him that it wasn't the best idea. So she basically boiled 4 eggs. And she colored those eggs, okay? Each one with a different color. And she gave him egg number 1, egg number 2, and she said, well, you see, these 4 eggs, although they're 4 eggs, but they really taste the same, even when they have a different color. And he said, you're right, but it was only full when I ate the 4. He was only full when he ate the 4. So she basically tried to make an argument that all the 4 eggs, despite the different colors,
They're still eggs.
they're still the same thing. But he was like, yes, but I wasn't full until I ate the 4.
She should hire me, the guy.
She should hire you
Yeah.
to advocate for her.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
the best one is car rentals. You know, when you
Mhm.
have your car breaks down, you have to get a rental,
Mhm.
and you forget half.
So
of the things
you're
here and half
pro-
of the things here. So I'm literally be looking for your shot here and here. Your whole life is gonna be: did I leave my shot here? Did I leave my shot here?
You know,
That's
subhanallah,
just the beginning.
Rabbil
Give it to
Alameen,
us,
you know,
okay?
Rabbil Alameen.
That's
I'll
it.
tell you one thing, Zamzam, Rabbil Alameen had made this halal, but here's one thing.
Mhm.
Polygamy does not suit every man and does not suit every woman.
100%.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we mentioned it before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not tell you, وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ أَلَّا تَعْدِلُوا فَوَاحِدَةً أَوْ مَا مَلَكَتْ أَيْمَانُكُمْ. If you fear that you would not be just. Why? Because polygamy actually brings in a higher probability and a higher chance of committing oppression, drama, and trauma. So at the end of the day, let's talk about monogamy here, okay? So even if he had another wife, at the end of the day, is that why did he get married to a second wife? She's still a wife, all right? And even if he had a second wife or a third wife, at the end of the day, she's right now next to him. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, oh, this is to discipline you too. وَاضْرِبُوهُنْ, and الضرب, we mentioned that one. Now scholars had differences of opinions on whether he has to take one after another, because ilwad seems to be, let's call it the least dramatic, because he's just basically verbal admonishing, verbal reminder, okay? الهجر في المضجع, now we're going sexual. الضرب, now we're going physical. All right. So the part about the darb, the Prophet did explain that it would be with something like siwak, and that it would be nothing but really a symbolic thing than anything else. With a tooth finger, you would really break your fingers if you would beat somebody with you.
No, not me. That's why I said no. وعلمهن أبو صلاة والنساء علمهن في السبع واضربوهن في
So
العشر
that
واضربوهن
hadith, علموا أبنائكم الصلاة وهم أبناء سبع واضربوهم عليها وهم أبناء عشر. There are some scholars that regarded that hadith as ma'lul. Majority of scholars regarded it, no, it is sahih. Majority of scholars regard it as sahih. What is ma'lul? Ma'lul basically means it's a type of a weak hadith.
Yes.
Okay. But even if we're talking about deep for children, because maybe discipline, etc., you're not supposed to be going to the level of harming the body where you're making the person bleed, breaking their bones, or hitting their heads, or you're not supposed to be going that far. But certainly Islam does consider as a method to discipline is to strike, but not strike to the point of harming the body. Now, here's the other part in where do we necessarily have to go in order? Scholars had differences of opinions on that, and the reason for their differences of opinions is because of the letter wa. The letter wa in Lugha Arabiya can mean just a simple addition. So I'm saying wafa came in, and then iman, and then zamzam. Okay, so that just basically means a simple addition. One, and it doesn't necessarily mean the order that they had come in. I just mentioned them as to layout. Some scholars said that no, if you were to look into the context, you could see that this is the lowest grade, and then a higher grade, and then this is the highest grade. In other words, they took from that in between the lines that is intending to go from easy to harder, and basically they said it would mean nothing. It would mean nothing if we were to disregard the lower and let's say the levels of the grade. Said no, you shouldn't be going to the final grade until you would try grade 1, and then grade 2, and then grade 3. Other scholars, they said no, yes, you can, because the letter wa is basically telling you it's just an addition. It doesn't necessarily mean a particular order. Okay. So does that mean that right there, even if we're talking about a darb, does that mean that Islam actually just means, yeah, women are right there, and where he could define nushuz, he would be the one to claim that there was nushuz, and then he would be the one to basically lay out the penalty? So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَإِنْ أَطَعْنَكُمْ, if they were to obey you, فَلَا تَبْغُوا عَلَيْهِنَّ سَبِيلًا. What is فَلَا تَبْغُوا? فَلَا تَبْغُوا, do not seek عليهن upon them farther, in other words, sabil, in where you're pressuring them with seeking more obedience. In other words, don't take advantage that you were capable of getting them back away from the shoes into your obedience, and expect to take advantage that you learned how to let her compromise and obey you, because the Lord Almighty says, Inna Allah kana aliyan kabira. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if they obey you, then keep in your taqwa, in your remembrance that the Lord Almighty is Aliyan, Aliyan, most high, Kabira, most almighty. In other words, if you look at this ayah, this is nothing but tahdhir, tahdid, is nothing but a caution. It is nothing but bringing in a warning and saying that the Lord Almighty, if you abuse, whether you're abusing your femininehood, you're abusing their social structure, their the way that they are living their life, their obedience, probably you knew how to force her to obey you, then your Lord Almighty is telling you He's most high and He's most great. Do not abuse your power, and know that the Lord Almighty is most high and can retaliate on her behalf. Can retaliate on her behalf. And next week, inshallah, because I can see some people are like, okay, we need to leave. Next week, what if she's not doing the shoes, or at least he's claiming that she's doing the shoes. He's claiming that she's doing the shoes. She's claiming, no, I'm not doing the shoes. I'm actually trying to prove a point. Here is what he's wanting. This is not his right. This is my right. What do we do in that situation? They're basically in a disagreement upon something, and each one might have a point. What should we do in that situation? Do we regard his opinion and disregard hers, or do we regard her weakness, vulnerability, and disregard him? Should we support her, or should we support him, or do we try to resolve the matter? Is it supposed to be the government? Is al-hakam to mean a government, or is this to actually mean somebody from her family? Does it have to be from the family? What if I were to assign a therapist to actually bring in some form of reconciliation between us? Is this at all acceptable? How much of weight should we give the therapist to get involved? An imam. And that sounds scary, doesn't
I
it?
heard gunshots.
So that's
I thought I heard gunshots.
I think you're right.
At first I heard gunshots.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you focusing on
I was, but I heard gunshots.
I think she's right. I think she's right. I heard that too. I heard that too. All right. So inshallah, next week is the man the one who needs to do wa'z? Wa'z, yeah. Well, yes, wa'z is basically the husband. Even the wife can do wa'z for her husband as well.
what is wrong?
Wa'z is a good reminder.
Oh, okay.
Whether you're reminding her of her duties towards the household, duties towards the husband, Jannah, etc. You're reminding her of probably how you love her, how he is trying to do the best for her, how he cares about her. And subhanAllah, most women, and this is a word to the men that are listening out there, it doesn't really need for a woman that is salihah, it doesn't need you to take you all the way there. Most women, and I really mean most women give them wallahi one word of love and she will give you herself. She just needs a flower. She just needs a word of love. Give her a hug and she will right there. She's willing to clean the house, be at your service, literally be at your service, and she will be at full joy. She enjoys being at your at your service. A woman enjoy, it's part of her fitrah. A salihah woman enjoys that she's basically treat her like a queen and she'll treat you like a king. أقسم بالله العظيم. A salihah woman. And the same thing I will tell you, ladies, you want your husband to treat you like a queen, treat him like a king. Treat your husband like a king, and trust me, he will see you as the queen. Because human beings, and you know what, even animals, it's part of our fitrah. مجبول على حب من أحسن إليها. It's part of our fitrah. You know, a cat, give her some bread, milk, whatever they eat, and the cat will come to you, and then they'll start wanting you to pet them. A dog, same thing. Give them food, and they'll come to you. No matter what animal you're talking about, they will recognize, if this is an animal, let alone a human being, they will recognize. They will recognize. And same thing, if you want the man to be your lovable husband, if you want him to treat you like a queen, wallahi, you be to him the person to treat him like a king. And he will, without him noticing, he cannot live without you. He will recognize that this is the person that I cannot live without. She's the person. And you might say, but why are we just looking at services? We are human beings. Services is basically what we seek. It's part. All your life is based on services. Why are you working? It's because you're trying to get the money, the service that you're putting in a service to get the money. You basically get into insurance. All of these things are services. You invest in services and you will see services coming to you. You will see them coming to you. You just have to let yourself live in that investment. Live in that investment. And it is part of our fitrah. على حب من أحسن إليها. You invest in good, wallahi, they will have no choice but to love you because they see the mercy. They see the mercy. Unless Ibn Haram, and it can happen.
Yeah.
Unless you've got Ibn Haram, wallahi, the son of Haram, wallahi, even if you would give them all the good, they'll never acknowledge it. I was listening to a story. A man got married to a woman, but it was a secret marriage. The secret marriage, that was during the Arab. There were two witnesses. The woman said, wallahi, he's married to me. Seemed like he bribed two witnesses. They said, nope. Said, but these two witnesses, they were there. Nope. Seemed like he bribed them. So they went to the judge. She said, he's married to me, even though I don't have the report to prove it. I brought you the witnesses, but they're bribed. They're not even witnessing truth. So the Qadi said, do you have a dog? Said, yes, we've got a dog. It's basically at the door. Security dog.
They have a dog?
So they have a dog, security dog. You can have a security dog. Okay. So the Qadi said to his officers, he said, go with the woman and the man to the claimed house. If the dogs bark at her, then she's a stranger. If the dogs don't bark, then they're familiar with her. The dogs didn't bark. So the Qadi said, it's, speaking of that, he said that the witnesses and the husband are going to be severely beaten. And woe unto the city where its dogs are more honest
than the people
and more loyal than the people themselves. Some people can go that low. Allah understand.
We're not going to hide the marriages.
We're not going to hide the marriages. Are you
That's
sure?
how to solve
Well,
the
I
problem.
already know you're married to Ismail, so nothing to be
So
hidden.
we can't hide the marriages.
Oh,
That's what is like part of the like Islamic
الزواج
message.
العرفي. No.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about a case. Okay, so we'll end right here, inshallah. What if the guy is not wise enough and she is wiser? Well, anybody can actually claim that they are wiser. She can say, well, I'm wiser than him. It's kind of like your saliva is sweeter in your mouth. You could, each and every single one. But here's one thing. You want to keep in mind, if she is, whenever somebody is wiser, subhanallah, the wisest person, the community and the people around you, they recognize your potentials and they will put you in leadership. They recognize your potentials and they will put you in leadership. You usually don't recognize your potentials. It's only until others push you forward. Remember, if you're stabbed in the back, that means you're ahead.
And it's your,
Ahead. That means you're ahead.
if you're stabbed in the back.
Yes.
Dr. Aysha, you teach us so many things.
It's a beautiful one.
Yeah, that means you're ahead.
Well,
And that's the thing. If you're actually right there, if you are wiser, by time, and this is, a lesson for those that are newlywed. In the beginning, your husband doesn't know your potentials, and you don't know his potentials as well. You will lay out different things later on. When you make and put in suggestions, little by little, he will discover that she was actually right on that. She was right on that. She was right on that. That's when he will recognize your potentials, and that is when he will put you ahead. He will put you ahead without you recognizing. Even though I'll tell you, yes, il-qawama is for men, but in certain situations, the woman can be wiser than the man. Can be wiser than the man. And we had seen many cases. One very important sign of wisdom is not being impulsive. That's the most important sign. Because the person that is impulsive is basically thinking through emotions and not through recognizing the patterns and recognizing the consequences. So if you're going to be impulsive from the beginning, thinking that you're wiser, and that, you're going to be ahead and charge because you're wiser, I'm sorry, that in itself is telling me that you're not wiser because you're impulsive.
But even if
But a wiser person would just let time in itself teach and let others know their potentials, that they actually were right in anticipating. What is wisdom? It's anticipating an event or a consequence before it even happens. The wiser you are and the more experienced you are, the fastest and the sooner you would be capable of anticipating the consequence before it happens. So that's why a person that is, in their 20s or in their 30s is definitely wiser than somebody that is 10. Why? When somebody that is 20 or 30, a person that's 20 is thinking 5 years ahead, but a person that is 30 is thinking now 10 years ahead. A person that is 30 is right now already thinking about probably 15 years. And a person that is 45 is thinking about retirement already, which is 20 years or 25 years. Absolutely. So in order to speak about wisdom, it's an issue of you proving that you are capable of anticipating the consequences of such decisions before they even happen. Where are we heading? In the beginning, especially if they're newlywed, you're both inexperienced. Both of you are not experienced. In the beginning, you're still learning. You're making decisions. You're still trying to figure yourselves out. But it isn't until later on, once he recognizes your wisdom and your potential, you will see. He will have no choice but to put you forward.
But you still respect him as a kawan, because otherwise
You still respect. Here's the thing. I'm not saying you won't respect him as a qawam. Okay, there's no doubt.
If you're wise, you do it by the rule of Allah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
you
but
know,
you don't have to say it. You will see yourself. He pushed you and come and ask you.
Listen, a wise person would never degrade others, because a wise person would always understand that you cannot have wisdom unless you learn that sometimes wisdom can come from those that you would least expect to be the wisest. You would not be wise unless you learn that you would learn from other people's experiences, that you have a lot to learn. So not until you listen to those that are less than you would not be wise. It's learning how to hear and listen more than what you say. That's why even with wisdoms, with owls, why are they the symbol of wisdom? Once there once was a wise old owl who lived in an oak. The more he heard, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. There's no way that you can be wise unless you learn how to listen more than speak.
Are you going to teach us like this when you go to Malaysia?
Am I going to teach you like this when I go to Malaysia? I'm probably going to speak Malaysian.
They're not speaking it. I thought they speak English.
Well, I know it's a different accent, so I'm still. I know how to imitate the Indians when they speak English, but I still don't know how to do it the Malaysian way. I have a very musical ear.
I think you'll catch up.
I think I'll catch up. I have a very, very musical ear. I was actually part of the orchestra. So I have a very musical ear and I can catch it. So I can hear you talking and I would like, okay, this person's from that country and this country just from the sound in your words. But then the Malaysian, I think I have to listen to them more often. Maybe when I'm surrounded by them, maybe I can pick up their accent.
I'm afraid they're gonna be very nice and humble. You'll be like,
I was told that, I'm still
That's so
learning about
nice.
them. I was told that that they're very well disciplined, very nice, but when they are angry, that they just stay away. So I don't know what that means. This is what I was told. So I hope it's not a stereotype, or maybe it is. Who knows? I still have to learn that.
have a lot.
That actually can have pros and cons because if you're just staying away, I don't really know what you're angry about for me to explain myself to you.
That's the worst person. It's a
Ah,
mystery.
Well, I mean,
What are
we
you
actually
thinking? What are
come
you
from El Khalil, and in El Khalil, when a person is angry, they'll voice it. They'll really voice it.
Yes.
And I mean, voice it. So,
لا there is حديث يصير الكاظمين الغيظ عندنا.
right,
That's true. You have to, when you be patient, you have to like be calm and
right. But at the same
but at the same time you have
communicate, I don't know. I guess I have to see it on ground. So yeah, maybe after 2 years we'll see. Would a khulu' be sufficient if you know you can't uphold your husband's rights and that you're afraid of abusing it? Yes, absolutely. So for khulu', scholars actually had differences of opinions on how far khulu' should be. So let me explain one thing, is that there is a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ actually said, any woman that seek divorce from her husband, then for no good reason, then Jannah is haram on her. I hate to shatter a lot of those men's ideas and the way they connected with this hadith, but this hadith is weak. Now, this doesn't mean that it's okay to ask for divorce for no good reason. This is not what this is saying. Because, of course, to demolish a home in a family for no good reason is definitely a sin. Okay? But does that mean that Jannah would be haram on her? Okay, so in that situation, when we're talking about khulu', we have another hadith where the woman actually said, I don't despise anything about Thabit, which is Thabit ibn Qais, who the Prophet ﷺ actually said, Thabitun fil Jannah. I don't have anything to criticize Thabit for, not his deen and not his akhlaq. But she said, إِلَّا أَنِّي أَكْرَهُ الْكُفْرَ فِي الْإِسْلَامِ. But I would hate to be a kafir like in akhlaq after being Muslim. And then there are other narrations that try to investigate, well, what did she really hate about the guy? Was it his height? Was it his appearance, nose, whatever it is? Or his personality, whatever it is? At the end of the day, it wasn't a major thing. Okay? It wasn't a major thing. To her, it was major because she said she doesn't criticize him not for his akhlaq and not for his deen. In other words, he was considered a person not only full in akhlaq and deen, but guess what? This is a person that even the Prophet ﷺ said, Thabit thabitun fil Jannah. Thabit is steadfast in Jannah. In other words, this man is actually approved by Allah. But still, this woman, although testifies his good akhlaq and good deen, still insists, but I cannot and I do not want to live with him because it's going to put me in a state of a kafira that is going back to the wrong morality, like a kafira, after being Muslim. Don't want to live that. So the Prophet says, would you return his garden? She said, yes. I would return his garden. Don't need it. Return his garden. And khulu' was actually done. Okay. So that's why scholars had differences of opinions if they both agree. And she basically has her reasons.
Yeah.
Basically has her reasons.
She's like, what? Jannah,
Right.
you're not gonna go,
But
that's
I
fine.
would be really critical. Many times I do get a lot of women, to come to me, oh, I basically don't like his sense of humor in this. I don't like that he's bald. I was really hoping that he had six pack. And I mean, all of this is real. I don't like his big nose. It's kind of bulky or whatever it is. Yani, subhanallah, what makes a man is more important than appearance. Wallahi. Of course, رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله. If whenever we're concerned about materialistic things, we end up losing the focus on al-ma'ani, on the meanings and on the principles. That's what really makes a man in the household. Recognize the things that he has, because hey, after all, if you want him six pack, are you also, well, I don't want to say she's six pack, but she could be fit and he's probably not fit. It doesn't have to be in that compatibility. But at the end of the day, is that I think it's important to understand every home has a wall that's covering it for the sake of privacy. Don't shatter your walls and build your walls of glass. Don't build your walls of glass, because they'll easily expose yourself and you'll let others find you an easy target. So that's number one. Number two is that every single home has its own secrets. What you would hear of a certain disagreement within the home can actually be a completely different story when you were to listen to both sides. And of course, at the end of the day, I would always say, weigh your priorities. Weigh your priorities before making the decision to go for khulu' or any type of a marriage resolution. Okay, I will end right here. And if somebody wanted to unmute themselves really quick, a minute, because Hudhaifa is excited to go home. Nobody wants to ask anything. I guess they want Hudhaifa to go home. All right. So this is it. Inshallah, we'll come to you next week, and we're going to talk about وَإِنْ خِفْتُمْ شِقَاقَ بَيْنِهِمَا. Friday. Inshallah, ya Rabbi, inshallah. I'm actually excited, inshallah. All right. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Hey, Hajj.